Welcome to Creatrix Convergence 2022, Repower Yourself, Your Sisters, Your World. In this online global event, our focus is on the evolutionary consciousness of the divine feminine and how the rise of this energy will radically transform the lives of women and girls. To usher in this momentous era, we're featuring extraordinary women sharing their powerful essence and unique contributions to compassionately heal humanity and the planet. I'm your host, Liz Williams. I'm here with my co-host, Sheila Cash, and today we are thrilled to have our guest speaker, Masami Covey. Welcome, Masami.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this.
We are so happy that you're with us, and I'd like to tell our listeners a little bit more about Masami. So Masami is a health intuitive, a functional nutritional therapist, and internationally recognized speaker. She reveals the root causes of imbalance using intuitive insights, whole person approach, and laser pointed guidance. She translates our subtle body language and provides practical tools, nutrient recommendations, breathwork, somatic movements, and more. Masami was born and raised in Japan in a bicultural family, and she draws extensively from her blend of East meets West culture, language, and energy medicine, as well as years of professional training and experience in functional nutritional therapy, yoga therapy, positive neuroplasticity, Ayurveda, and applied linguistics. She's a faculty member of the Shift Network and a frequent speaker on health and energy summits, podcasts, and programs. So again, we're so happy to have you with us, and we're going to dive right in.
Okay.
So we're going to start. I read a fascinating story of your own evolution, Masami, through a health condition that you became diagnosed with, which was MS. And the incredible discoveries that you made during your journey through of the mind-body integration and the ability of the body to heal. Could you tell our listeners a little bit more about that journey?
Well, thank you for asking that question, because I often do not visit or revisit that time in my life to sit with it. And, being asked that question, I am reminded how extraordinary that experience was and experience is, that I have been able to overcome that, a tremendous, seemingly impossible kind of a mountain to climb almost. But I think it comes back to, even just myself growing up in Japan, and my father was the only white man in an entire city of 1 million people. And we were the only mixed children. My sister and my brother and I were the only mixed children. Made me really look at the world from a very different perspectives. And I was labeled a lot growing up. So when you're very different, you are automatically given some kind of label or a box that you're supposed to fit in. But when you are so different from the rest of the world of 1 million people that did not look anything like me, and I didn't look like them, even though I spoke only Japanese and I only went to the Japanese schools, it's just, they were trying to categorize me. So I saw the MS diagnosis almost as if something that I needed to reestablish and rename it on my own, just as I was named and labeled, and bigotry was rampant when I was growing up. So, still is. It's just kind of gotten underground with it. But, just half breeds to, we were called mutts to, you name it. The racism was just everyday life experience for me. So when I received that diagnosis of MS, the doctor that gave me that diagnosis was crying. And I looked at him and I went over to him and I gave him a hug and I said, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right, because I am not going to let that label stick to me. And he was just really confused. He was just looking, but he's a good friend of mine also. So that's why he was really distraught. But I think what changed the course of my diagnosis and how I did not let that completely take over me is that I am not that label. And there's a beautiful quote by a philosopher in Europe, and then I will come back with the name, Klinghardt. I think that his last name is that. But he said, when you label me, you negate me. And I wasn't going to be negated by that label. And I needed to redefine who I am. So that sent me into another journey to say, what can I do? Where did I take the wrong turn? Maybe not the wrong turn, but I took a little detour, off the course that I needed to come back to. So I just needed to find my way back home. And I truly believe that all sickness is homesickness. And I was homesick for myself. So I needed to come back to me. And that's ultimately what I did. And it's been a hard work. And, maybe some people say, are you healed from MS? And I think there's a difference between healing and maybe putting your diagnosis to remission. I might be somewhere in between. At times I feel like I healed it. And sometimes if I push myself too much, there's this twinge of voice that comes back to me. It's very quiet though, not the scream that I was experiencing when I got diagnosis. But it's just always taking me home, back. Where are you? What's your sleep like? Are you pushing yourself too much? Do you have people that you can talk to about your own stories? Are you unpacking your backpack that is full of junk and things you have to do, and all the energies that you're putting out, are you full of it? And are you just weighted down from that? So you need to check in with all that. Of course, the diet. If you're in it, and I was not eating well. I was eating horrible foods, and I was not taking time for lunch. I wasn't chewing my food. I wasn't digesting anything. So how can I digest my life? And, the last thing I can say about the MS is that it's an autoimmune condition. And so many women are now getting diagnosed with autoimmune conditions, from thyroid, like Hashimoto's, to rheumatoid arthritis, to MS, right? And when you really sit back and look at these things are unfolding, and then we're getting so many labels from, autoimmune conditions are undigested and unmetabolized anger. And I think I was angry. If I go back, I was livid, to be honest. I was so angry that I was told to move to this country, to the United States, when I was not quite 16. I lived with 2 foster care homes, didn't speak a word of English. I lived in a northern part of Minnesota. Just thinking about it, makes me slightly choke up, to be honest, still, because that is still deeply there. But I needed to go through my own, not just irritations, I'm talking rage that was burning up inside me, that was eating away at me. That is what autoimmune condition was for me. Maybe not for all of you that are maybe being diagnosed with autoimmune conditions. But for me, I really needed to get to that nail and hit that head on the nail, hit it hard, because I'm like, this anger needs to be digested and processed and be used for my energy to move myself forward. So that's how I have worked with my MS, and still to this day, I do work on it. It's not a everyday focus anymore, because I feel so much better. And I have a good sense of when to rest, when to eat certain things, and when to go for a walk, and when do I need to lie down. All these things, I'm checking in with myself constantly. But that's what I would love to share with all the people that are listening, is that check in with yourself, because all sickness is homesickness. So what are you homesick of? What are you missing in you? And come home to that. Yeah.
That is such a profound quote. I am going to use that for the rest of my life. All sickness is homesickness. I just think that's profound. And it speaks so much to what we're all dealing with now, and why that inner work is so important. And I also want to say I can completely relate to this issue of rage, because when I was experiencing physical symptoms and started to do the mind-body work, and the book I'd read said, it's typically related to rage. And my response was, I don't have rage. I might have a little anger, but I don't have rage. And then I started doing the practices that were recommended. And as I say, the rage spilled onto the page. And I couldn't believe it. That was sitting inside me. And I did either I wasn't aware of it or I didn't think I was allowed to express rage, which could be part of it as well. So absolutely fabulous story. Thank you so much for sharing that, Masami. I want to turn a little bit now to what women can do. And so in your description of the topic, you say this: our collective ecosystem has become out of balance, and therefore we are being asked to course correct internally and collectively shift our consciousness. But this requires you to ignite and activate your own power center in your body so you can digest and release outmoded patterns and beliefs and direct your actions toward a higher purpose. So I'm curious if you can go a little bit deeper into what and where is one's body or one's power center, and why is it so important for thriving and then for reaching your life's goals?
So the power center is, and I will reveal where that is. But when you think of different centers, you might think of chakra centers or maybe heart center or the mind center. There are many centers, and in Chinese or the Japanese language, you call it dantian, or in Japanese called tanden or hara. Hara is H-A-R-A. So that's all kind of in the belly center. But the area that I'm very much focused on is the gut center, but it's basically the third chakra. And the third chakra is, I call it the forgotten chakra. And there's actually a minor, I wouldn't even call that so much of a minor chakra, but there's another beautiful chakra that sits right above the third chakra and below the fourth chakra. It's called wish fulfilling tree. And it's red with orange, and then this gorgeous tree that comes up. But so it's right in that solar plexus area. And I'm very focused on the wish fulfilling tree chakra because that's like a 3.0 kind of a chakra, but also the third chakra, because I feel like it's something that's like skips over for most spiritual communities. People don't want to talk about third chakras because they're like, well, third chakra is all about your self-esteem and, maybe ego center. And then it's all your knowing center. And then this is your courage comes from. It's all important, but we have to go to the heart, or no, we got to get into the desires of the second chakra. And I'm wondering, okay, how do we bridge your own deepest desires and manifest that into the heart center, filter it through the heart expressions, and comes out of your arms and your voice and your throat center of your fifth chakra? We have to cook that desires and digest it and manifest it and, make it absorbable so that it can express itself. And that's third chakra. So that is my power center that I focus a lot as a functional nutritional therapist. And that's definitely connected to your stomach, your liver, gallbladder, and your spleen, but also your pancreas. So it's right in that center where the diaphragm drops and comes up, drops and comes up. That region where it's getting massaged about 27,000 times per day, because that's how many times you breathe. And that is the center where our vagus nerve is communicating back from that region, 80% up to your brain. So that's your power center. And how the power center is dwindling is what I'm concerned about with what's going on with women and children's bodies. And because most of the people that I work with are women, and I'm seeing so many women's third chakra, the center of the power center, just dialed down. Everybody's just kind of like dimming down themselves. They're barely making it. They're surviving it, but they're not thriving. And one reason is because they're not digesting. And I mean digesting foods, but not digesting their traumas. They're not digesting, let's say, anger. They're not basically alchemizing. The alchemy happens right in that center. You can turn these things, the capital T or little t traumas, into something much more, but we don't have the digestive fire. And that's key, because in Ayurveda, we call it the Agni. Agni is A-G-N-I. That's the digestive fire. It's where you're looking for the furnace that reignites, in the change of the season, and the furnace goes and it comes back on. That's what we want to all feel. But over the years of poor diet, processed foods, suppression of our emotions. We are not supposed to express our anger, and we're not supposed to feel the desires and cook that up and then bring it out into the world. We're not allowed to do that for centuries, if you look back at human history, but particularly women's history. So I think it's been really dialed down. And that's why I get excited to help all women I work with to get that back on, get that fire back on. And literally, as well as, things that I've talked about, how to maybe use that center for your spiritual growth, use it for your trauma work, use it for you to manifest what it is that you want to do. But you want to physically do it also. So this is when digestion becomes very important as a nutritional therapist.
So you've mentioned autoimmune diseases, and I'm curious, what other ways are you seeing these kind of stagnations or blockages? Women in survival mode. What's actually occurring? And then, are there steps that women can begin taking to support their power center, to build that strength in their power center, so that they can, really be thriving and working toward their higher purpose?
Yeah, so the stagnation is going to show up on all kinds of places. So you're going to start to feel like you don't have the flow. So physically, you might feel brain fog. That's truly the stagnation all across this region. And another thing that I forgot to mention is that there's that wish fulfilling tree right there that gets nourished through what's getting digested. So think of it, the soil underneath that is feeding that tree. And that tree expands and touches the heart center, because that is the expression of love and joy and happiness and in reachability, openness. That's what the wish fulfilling tree is trying to do. But it can't be nourished if you're not digesting foods, right? So stagnation symptoms are just all over the place. But one of the things is like lymphatic system that gets very, very clogged up. Other thing would be bile flow. I see this with women a lot. So about 10 years ago, when I was really starting to work on physiological side of my body and not just the energy medicine, but I wanted to really get into the science of the body, because I needed to do that to really heal from my MS. Wasn't just about doing energy medicine, but I really needed to bring the nutritional side, the physiology, the science. That's when I dug deeper into the liver gallbladder issues. And what's happening is that at that time in the United States, we were removing about 500,000 gallbladders mostly from women. And now fast forward, we're removing about 1 million gallbladders from women. I mean, that's a lot of gallbladders that are going out every year. And why are we doing that? One is the stagnation. So the bile becomes very sludgy and they stop moving. If the bile is not moving, then that slowness of that power center means that you're going to have thyroid issues. Because if the bile is not flowing, you can't conjugate the T4 into T3. So the hormones can't do its job for the thyroid. But also, if the bile is not flowing, then in your estrogen level, or it's called xenoestrogen, but it's like a plastic estrogen, not great estrogen, they can actually get stuck in your system and gets recirculated. That's going to create edema. That's going to create further lymphatic issues. That can clog up different areas in the breast tissues. And it can have things like maybe tinnitus, sinusitis, all the itises. So head feels heavy, puffy, always feeling like there's congestion going on, and heart issues. I mean, so on and so forth. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So the stagnation of this third power center can have all these expansive issues all throughout your body. And one last thing about your third chakra, right in the center of your body, is where you have this, like, I call them like a central station of lymph nodes. All the lymph nodes that come together sits right around the belly, not belly button, but around the stomach area. Okay, right above the stomach area, right where the wish fulfilling tree is. So your wish can't come true if your lymphatic system is clogged up, your bile is not flowing, you're not digesting, so you're burping, gassy, bloated, constipation, or maybe even diarrhea. Diarrhea is just another form of constipation, right? All these things can come up. And I think a lot of us that are listening to this are going, oh my gosh, I check off multiple of those. Then we need to come back to the third chakra. And one of the simplest things that does not cost you anything to do, I would say maybe several. One is twisting. Twisting is great. As you inhale and then really lift your spine and twist. And as you twist, you can exhale like you're wringing out a towel. And then you could do the other side, right? Or you could do a cow and cat. So on your hands and knees. And if that's a difficult pose for some of you, then you can do it seated and you can just lift your chest and round, lift your chest and round. You can coordinate it with your breath work, right? So moving that area. And so you can see that last several years of sitting culture, so much Zooms, and we're just sitting. That is going to stagnate that region of us so much more. And I think that's part of the reasons why so many women's gallbladders are being removed. One, because it's stagnant, and also a lot of us women are feeling burnt out. I mean, we're exhausted. We're exhausted because we can't feel the flow within ourselves, because what's outside is what's inside. What's inside is what's outside. And we're just constantly mirroring this truth between the outside world and inside world. So, and I can give you more, but I'll pause here for a moment.
Well, you are such an embodiment of the mind-body blending, of the East-West blending. And I'm even, feeling into, with the power center being right there in the middle, that it's also that bridge between, mind, body, and spirit. And just incredible, profound messages of inspiration for the women, for the listeners out there, that they can take control, that they do have that healing ability. So let's move to the positive neuroplasticity, which you talk about, and tell us how that is cultivated, and how does that help to bridge and to lift up, both mind, body, and spirit, and how can that help to support women who are seeking solutions around the world? How can that positive neuroplasticity help?
Sure. I can even go into a little bit of a practice as well. And maybe before moving to that, because I think we have a tendency to go straight to the mind, but I think it's very important to understand that your mind doesn't control the rest of you, right? Your mind is just all the other organs in the mind comes together, and they're all equally important. That being said, there's a lot of communications that are happening from the power center back to the mind. So I'm going to come back to the gut center one more time before we go into that, because there are a couple of different things that you can do without, it's not going to cost you anything. And there are a couple more things that you can do. One is sunshine. So I just call it sun gazing in the morning. The most important thing to do is first thing in the morning, before you do anything, maybe go get yourself a glass of water. And then this is what I do every morning, is that I clean my tongue first. And then, so I get rid of the ama, which is something that it gets accumulated on your tongue, which is kind of sounds yucky, but I just call it the poop in your mouth, just so you know. So I scrape that ama toxicity out of my system. Then I get a glass of water. Then I go outside and I just say good morning to the sunshine. Even it's raining, snowing, windy out there, cloudy out there, it doesn't matter. I still go out there and say, good morning, sunshine. Good morning, morning. That morning sun is probably the best thing for you to reignite your third chakra, because the center of your third chakra is where we collect 10,000 sunlight. In yoga, we call it 10,000 sun is collected in your third chakra. So it's like your galaxy sun, but maybe there, who knows how many more suns are out there, right? They all come together and they shine right in there. So you're getting to connect with that and say, hey, I hold the sunlight in me, and there's the sunlight. So that's a great way to awaken who you are first thing in the morning. And then your eyes are very important. That is going to catch the sunlight. You don't need to look at the sun directly, but you're getting the sunlight. So you could be looking down, you could be having your eyes closed as well. But just getting maybe 5 to 10 minutes of the sunlight in your eyelids or around your eye area can really awaken not just the power center, but that can have a great impact on your brain's health, because that's going to help you to produce melatonin at night. You're going to sleep better. If you don't sleep well, then you can't really be doing neuroplasticity work either. Because if your biology isn't there to support you, no amount of meditation or positive thinking or positive affirmation is going to really stick till your brain has the foundation to be healthy. So getting the sunlight is going to help you to produce melatonin at night, which will clear the debris and memories and maybe toxicity that you've picked up. And I'm in a spiritual community. I call it the karmic looping or karmic debris. These things can be circulating inside you, but melatonin is very important for supporting that to be clear during the night through the lymphatic system. So that's a great thing to do. One more thing that everybody can do, and it does not cost you anything, is to eat your largest meal at between 10 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So when the sun is up, you need to eat your largest meal, because that's when your digestive fire, your third chakra, is most active. But so many of us are skipping breakfast. We're not eating lunch because you're just not hungry till. Some people are not till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They're like, oh, it's an intermittent fasting. And I say, no way, that's not an intermittent fasting. That is basically you're having blood sugar dysregulation. So to eat the largest meal at lunchtime and eat the least amount at dinner, that actually helps you to wake up more refreshed and rested and reignite your third chakra. And that's going to also help your brain function better, because if your brain is clogged up with things that you didn't digest during the day, it gets recirculated through the night and you will not sleep well. You will wake up between the hours of 2 and 4 o'clock trying to clear things out. So before we get into the neuroplasticity, I think it's important that we set the stage for healthy body first, because in the spiritual community that I've been working with for a long time have kind of omitted the body side and said, body, mind, spirit, body is this little whisper, and the mind and spirit has been so focused. So my job is to really bring the body back into where it deserves to be, which is equal weight from the rest of the mind and spirit. So going into the neuroplasticity, it's one of those things that we are, as humans, are fundamentally want to conserve energy. Because in order to survive on this earth, we don't want to use up too much energy. So brain has a tendency to stick with habits. So changing habits are very, very difficult because it's energy intensive activity, right? So we're always doing the same thing, even though you want to try to do different things. So neuroplasticity is helpful because it's gently rewiring you, gently changing the way you're walking your path. So instead of always taking the same route to the grocery store and then coming back on the same way, and buy the same groceries and coming back, neuroplasticity, what it does functionally is to change the way you even go to the grocery store. So that alone could be a neuroplasticity. But the great way to do this is to think about maybe, and then I came up with this practice called CARE. And I wasn't sure I was going to even share this today, but I'm glad that you brought this up as a total surprise. But it's great because then that's how I'm going to rewire my brain too, right? So I'm not stuck in my habitual answers. But I call it care practice. So CARE. First, the C stands for creating. Okay. So create something right now. So this practice costs nothing, everyone. Okay. But it will change your brain functions and will start to rewire you differently. Okay. So create kind of a positive experience that maybe you can remember. It could be something very, very simple. Like I'll give you a very silly example. Okay. So I just went to the post office and the line was really short. And I thought, oh, this is great because I have an interview today. I need to get back, so I was kind of excited. So, and then I know all the postal guys. So I was talking to them, I was having a good time. And then when I went back to the car, I thought, oh, that was a nice experience. I need to create that experience regularly inside me, whether I'm at the post office or not. So right now I can just do that and say, wow, that felt really good. It was nice to say hi to them. It was a beautiful weather, but it could be something like imagine cute kitties, or puppies, or your grandchild's little feet or hands, or something, just maybe a spring flower garden or a summertime garden, and just come up with something that you just need to create it inside you. So let's just take a moment, all of us, just think of it. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it first. So, I would love to, one of you, maybe you want to share what your creative thought that came up that cheered you up and makes you go, ooh, that was so delicious. So what was that?
Well, waterfalls make me very happy. And I love the sound. I love the way they look. And it always really calms my nervous system. So I can create a scene of putting myself in a scene, being next to a waterfall and hearing it, and even smelling the fresh air, and the sun, seeing the sunbeams coming down, all aspects of it. I can feel an instant peace.
Good. And it's very important that you don't just visualize, but you word it out like you just did. That is a key, because then that basically unites your brain, right? Our brain is not as simple as right side of the hemisphere and the left side of the hemisphere. That kind of thinking is very 1980s, everyone. So our brains are always working together, front and back and side to side. They're all communicating, but it likes to visualize, but it also likes to word things out. Then it starts to stick. So anytime you're like, I need to create positive feelings that I can word it out, then that becomes a very much embodied experience right there, right? And you could feel it that you were there. You took us into your waterfall space. And then the next one, the A, is to absorb. So you want to absorb that, okay, into areas of your bodies that you feel like, yeah, that area feels a little bit neglected, or maybe feels a little hollowed out, or maybe you can even just bring it into your heart center. It doesn't matter, but you're going to take the gesture and say, okay, I have that experience I've created inside me. Like if you think of a little kitten, you can just imagine you have that kitten and then you put it inside your heart. Okay. And then when you do that, women are not very good at receiving. So that is the next R, right? You are going to receive that full-heartedly. Okay. Because we're good at like talking about it, giving it, you're sharing it. But when it comes to, okay, I'm going to absorb this and I'm going to receive this. So I imagine like it comes in a beautiful box of gift with the big bow on it. I love polka dots. So I think of little like polka dot wrapping paper with a big bow on it. And I'm receiving that and I'm fully feeling that inside my body. And I might even unwrap that box and hold it in. Okay. So that's the CAR part. You may just stop there. Okay. That could be one option because you're already rewiring yourself just by doing that after the sunlight exposure in the morning. You just take a moment and do the care, but CAR. But if you start to do this and you're like, yeah, I have a repertoire of good creations that the eye can tap into, like your library of care practice, right? Then you could go to the last stage, which is a little bit challenging. So you don't need to go there right away, because some of us that been through tremendous amount of traumas, we really need to make sure that we feel safe, right? So even you can look around the space that you're sitting. You can feel your feet. You can even tap your feet, wiggle your fingers and your toes and say, I'm safe in this moment. And if you feel pretty good and grounded, then let's go to the E practice, which is to extend this idea that what we've done so far with the care practice to something that is really challenging in your life right now. Could be financial stress. Could be maybe your workplace is having you come back, 5 days per week, and you've been really struggling with that because you've been juggling the household items and your children's care, and then maybe their schoolwork, and then you're having to work full time, but you've been able to juggle somehow, right? Because you didn't have to go into the office, but now that becomes very much of a stressor. Then in that moment, you might get so rigid. And when we get rigid, we lock up our power center. Can you feel that when you get really nervous and anxious? We're not open in our belly, like a Buddha belly, those happy, happy Buddha belly, right? We don't have that. We get so hard. So this is when you can say, can I extend this creative, beautiful space I've created inside me, that I've received, this beauty that I've created and I've received and I absorbed? Can I extend that to that very complicated or maybe very challenging situation? And just in your mind is okay. You just take a moment and say, can I bridge this over? Can I touch that shore, the other side of that river? And, it's not always easy, and it's not clear cut, like you can always do it. But maybe the drive to work, instead of just, start ruminating over, oh my gosh, what's the workplace is going to be like? I bet I'm going to have a pile of things I have to do. Instead of going to that, do the creative work first, absorb it, receive that goodness, receive that beauty and goodness, and see if you could extend it out to your office space before you arrive. If you continuously do that, your brain can rewire, but it takes time because you've been going through the same rut for a long time. So give yourself at least 30 days to begin to introduce new habits. It takes about 60 days of practice to start to make that more of a regular thing for you. And it takes upwards of 90 days for that new habits to become part of who you are, like part of your neuroplasticity, part of your neurons. So I hope that care practice is helpful.
I love that care practice, and I love that it's easy to remember. So thank you for sharing that. And I think it's also so fascinating to know that, neuroplasticity is available to us regardless of age. I think in the past, there was always the thought that, your brain was just, you could only grow to a certain point and then that was it. And that's not true. So this is something that's available to women and men of all ages. So thank you for sharing that. The other thing that I would believe, and based on your work, is so important is play and laughter. I feel as if I've been encouraged to play over and over again, and I'm still trying to remember how to do that and to incorporate it into my life. But a huge part of that is laughter and joy and just humor. And so I'm wondering if you could just expand a little bit on that. What part laughter plays in healing?
Oh, huge. And I'll bring it back to my MS as well. And before I do that, along the line of the laughter, and since I love somatic work with all the things I do, so what we did with the care practice might be a little bit too, you could get a little stuck in your brain region with it. Okay. So if you could bring your hands to the practice, that could be joyful and fun too. So when you're thinking of the care in the beginning part, like creating new, really fun events that happened in your life, or, even like I said, puppies and things like that. When you're doing that, you can actually massage your mohawk line. So it's an Ayurveda practice. It's called the mohawk line. Okay, so it's from about the third eye and all the way across to the back of your neck area. You can actually massage it as if you are peeling an orange, like you're separating an orange, as you're visualizing it, as you're speaking it. And when you do that, you're actually draining part of the lymphatic system that is in there, that is getting congested and stagnant. And it's called the glymphatic system. And maybe some of you have heard of glymphatic system, but it's basically glial cells in your brain and the lymphatic system come together and made the word glymphatic system. But it's this fluids that are flowing through. And when we get rigid, when we get stuck and we can't think of anything positive and we can't laugh anymore and everything seems like falling apart, that's a biggest sign. And anxiety and worry, and then you can't, everything becomes just too much. And people say, I'm so overwhelmed. Okay, that means your glymphatic system is clogged up. So as you're doing a care practice, you might want to peel an orange on your head. Okay, and then just loosen up that region. Okay, that will be, you may start laughing too, when you start doing that. So bringing back the joy and laughter. I remember, okay, so I was in so much pain when I was in the midst of getting diagnosed with MS, because, by the time you get diagnosed, you've progressed quite a bit, right? And I couldn't walk anymore. I was using wheelchair at like public places, and I was always carrying my crutches around because I just couldn't get around. And I was in severe, severe pain. And in about a year after my diagnosis, I got hit by an armored truck going to work and totally destroyed my car, and my neck reversed in curvature. And I just couldn't even operate anymore. My body was basically on complete freak out mode. So laughter was no longer in my day-to-day. And I couldn't sleep in my regular bed. So we had set the massage table in our the bedroom, and my husband will sleep on the bed and I will be sleeping on a massage table, because that's as far as I could go down. And one night, this has been a long journey for my husband too. And he said, I think I'm just going to turn on something funny. And I said, really? It hurts to laugh. Like I could barely move. So it was hurting me to even laugh. I couldn't take deep breaths anymore. But he said, I'm going to turn on Mr. Bean. So we don't even have to read, subtitles, or we don't even have to listen to the words. We just watch the movements. So we watched Mr. Bean. I don't know, Mr. Bean from England, but, he does all these weird things like Chaplin, Charlie Chaplin of the modern era, I guess. And I gradually started to work on laughter. It hurt so much in the beginning. I mean, it was painful. But as I was able to start to laugh, things started to move, because laughter is an outward expression. It's an exhale. And that's an important thing to remember about laughter, is that when you are in stress or in shock, you stopped at the inhale. Okay. I really want you to understand that. So when you're in shock, you don't go into, no, you go into, and you're locked up. You're completely locked in that position. And you take very shallow breaths. So that's where I was at. I was in shock. My body was in full-on shock, especially after my car accident. So you can imagine I did not take exhales. So I think almost I've forgotten how to take exhales. And if somebody said, hey, Masami, here's some yogic practice, and you can, you need to do this to exhale, I'll be like, you know what? Give me a break. I could barely even get out of bed, and you want me to do more self-care? But the fact is that the laughter came in, and it wasn't something like, this is the self-care and you must do this 10 minutes per day. No, it was just a little bit of joke, a little bit of funniness. And we started doing that almost every night for about 20 minutes, because that's like short clips, 20 minutes of Mr. Bean every night. And that started to move my diaphragm, and I began to exhale. Because what's happening in most of our lives are we're holding on to so much. We're carrying on too much. We are doing too much. We're seeking too much. We're absorbing too much. We're getting too many news and too many things we're signing up for. We are full. So many of us women are full to the rim and we're spilling over it. So, but then, we continue to put more and more. No, maybe I need to do more of this. Maybe I need to learn this more. Maybe I need to get certified for this more. You know what? The thing is, we might just need to watch Mr. Bean and just cough up some of the accumulated stagnations from our third chakra center, our power center. And that really actually helped me to heal. I know this for a fact. That was one of my biggest shifting, changing moments in my journey of MS and car accident. Yeah, that I went through.
I love that. I know our listeners are loving it too. And just the idea of the mohawk massage, which we can all do. We can even all get a mohawk and then massage it. And the idea of just, welcoming the sun in the morning, adding the lymphatic massage. And if I'm doing that outside and I'm not laughing, other people might be laughing at me. So it would be a gift to all of us all the way around. So, Masami, you have really given us so many, through the inspiring personal stories that I know are inspiring hundreds, a couple 100,000 people out there. And also just the really valuable techniques. As we start to wind up now, is there any other message that you would like to bring to our listeners? Any key piece that you would like to leave them with, and around personal healing and how they can heal themselves?
Yes, I think there are a couple that I want to mention. But the first thing is you need to unpack to get yourself unstuck. But we don't really have a lot of that exhaling space available. I mean, yes, granted, we can connect with one another with the Zoom these days, which is lovely. But I think what I've learned over the years is this concept of, it's called narrative medicine, which I'm very much interested in, and I'm studying about it right now. It's a kind of a cutting edge practice right now. And Columbia University is really focused on this. And I encourage all of you to look up narrative medicine. But it's basically sharing stories. We all need to be heard. And, I'm really glad that both of you decided to ask me about my journey with MS. And also, I ended up bringing up my car accident and things like that too. But I don't talk about it much, partially because when you're a teacher role and I'm tend to be working with clients who are sick also, I will put myself aside and I just kind of focus on helping them. But there's so much healing power to sitting down and just simply just sharing your journey, your traumas, your memories, and laughters. And so we don't come together at the kitchen table and talk about it, and then Rachel Naomi Remen wrote a book I think now it's 2 decades ago now. But one of the things she says is that every body is a story. And I think if we can, especially women, maybe not so much with men, I'm not quite sure yet, but especially with women, we've got to find that kitchen table again, where we can gather together with our teas and little biscuits in the afternoon, or some other time is fine, but to truly listen in. So you're not just hearing somebody talk in the background, but 100% present and listening without thinking about, oh, I had it worse than she did, or, oh, I topped that off, or none of those comparisons, none of those jealousy, but just like, tell your story. I want to hear your story. And I think this is why I love to anyway, read memoirs. They are just my way of healing. So I spent 3 years writing my memoir. This was a couple of years ago. after my hometown got struck by two major earthquakes, 7.3 and 7.4, and we lost our family home. My father ended up dying in that. And my hometown's castle was crumbling. I mean, it was just a horrific scene. After that, I spent 3 years writing a memoir. And I met with my agent, and it was 2 days before I met my agent to talk about my memoir. Something came to me and said, my inner wisdom, my intuition came to me and said, you've done your job. You don't need to publish this. That's not why you're writing this. Put that aside. Now you can incorporate your stories and your journeys into the work you do, the healing work you do. You can weave that in and out into the tapestry of who you are. And you don't need to publish this. And I was shocked because that inner voice was so strong that I contacted her and I said, it's going to be a waste of time for us to meet in 2 days. She said, well, let's meet anyway. So we ended up meeting. But basically I said to her, I did it for myself and it was so healing. So if you don't have the kitchen table that you can gather with others, start with your memoir writing, whether you're writing to publish it or not, or you're leaving that for your grandkids or for a future people to read. Okay. It doesn't matter. Or nobody reads it like mine. It doesn't matter, because that is what I had to do to process my own inner junk and inner anger. And, just a quick quote is that I love David White. He's a poet that I really, really respect. And he says, the antidote to exhaustion is not necessary rest. The antidote to exhaustion is wholeheartedness. And I think that's what all of us need, especially women need. We don't need to be told to rest more, go do self-care, go sign up for massage. You just need to go do a spa weekend. Maybe what we need is wholeheartedness, where we can all come together and say, I'm here. My third chakra is open. My heart center has been fed through the wish-fulfilling tree. I'm open to receive, and I'm here to hear you, to listen to you. I am 100% present for you. And if one person can do that for you, tears well up for me, because the world that we will be living in will be a very different place. And so for those of you that are listening to this, I want all of you to know that I'm listening. I'm listening to you. I hear you when you talk to me about your struggles. I hear you. And, know that all three of us today held the space for all of you to be heard also. And I want to thank both of you for hearing my story too. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up comment, and it touches me as well. My daughter, when she was in university, actually it was a program that Harvard was doing with Boston University at the time, and taking certain students, and she was one, that went into high security prisons, women's prisons, many of them on death row. And she taught creative writing there and helped these women tell their stories so that they could be heard. And they talked about what a healing experience that was for them. Even so, at any stage of their lives, no matter what the circumstances, your message is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and two things come to mind. And one is, if we knew each other's stories, we'd probably be a lot more accepting. We'd realize that, the division is not so wide, the gap is not so wide. So that's so important. But it also touched me when you talk about women and burnout and all of this. It's a part of the reason we're not telling those stories is because our lives are so damn busy. We don't have time to sit down anymore with girlfriends. I don't know how often that happens where I can't even find somebody available to go out, or go for a walk because we're all so busy. So that, it's all plays into it. So, so much of what you've said, Masami, is just incredible wisdom. Thank you so, so much for sharing that. And so much, as you said, for not a dollar, not a dime. This is all available to us right now. So really, really appreciate it. And it's not enough, because you've got a free gift that you've offered as well, which addresses exactly what we're talking about. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, so it's the stages of burnout. So you can print that out. It's a PDF form. So you can just print it out or just look at it and familiarize yourself, because the first step to healing yourself is to get to know yourself, right? Coming home to your being. So if you don't know how much you've been pushing yourself, and you might have been like judging yourself or maybe other people and say, why is she so irritated? Or why am I so agitated or anxious about this? If you look at the stages of burnout, you begin to notice, oh my goodness, I am already stage 3.5, or I'm already crossing over to the 4 to 5. Then you can begin to say, you know what, I need to pull back a little bit. I do need to take that time and maybe reach out to my best friend, or maybe I do need to take that 10 minutes in the morning and just write a couple of things that I need to express, but I don't have anybody that I can reach out to right now. So I'm going to express it on the paper. So it's one way to really check in with yourself, and so that you don't go all the way to stage 5 of burnout, because I was in stage 5 of burnout, and it took me a decade to rewind that back to about stage 2. And once you're there, it's so easy to slip to stage 5. It's so easy, just like the neuroplasticity I talked about. It became my habits to say, yes, I will do it. Yes, I will show up. Yes, I'm here for you. Yeah, if I need to be at my office at 9 o'clock at night, I will be there. Or if you need me to be at your house by 5:30 in the morning before the market opens. I have clients that would start at 6 in the morning and then will end at 9:30 at night. I mean, I said yes to too many things, but if I knew how far I've progressed, I might have stopped it a little bit sooner, So I think that tool is wonderful, not just for getting to know you, but what that PDF has taught me is to have compassion for others. When I started to learn about the burnouts of myself and the stage of them, I'm not kidding you, I was able to forgive my father. I finally saw it, that he did the best he could. I would keep saying that to myself. He did the best he could. He did the best he could. But I was so angry at him for so long till I learned about the burnout stages. And I thought, oh my gosh, he was at stage 4 and 5 for pretty much the entire time that I knew him. And that led me to having compassion and ultimately forgiveness for him. So I'm hoping that that small little PDF can lead you to much more journey that will explore you to different areas of healing and compassion, maybe loving and joyfulness, and to understand that all of us are walking around right now on this earth pretty burnt out, pretty exhausted. And so if we can just look at each other and say, I see you. I see you. I think that's going to open up your heart also. Yeah.
I have no doubt that many will find that tool so valuable. And especially you're relating the story of your father, because the generations that came before us, our parents, our grandparents, didn't even have a concept of burnout. It's like it was just the way of life, and we are the ones who are now, with recognition and awareness, able to transform it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to seeing that myself. So, Masami, we've been asking each one of our guests this final question. In these uncertain times right now, what is it that brings you hope?
I'm pausing for a little bit. What gives me hope? So many things. The first thing that popped into my head was children. I work with a lot of kids as well. And I'm, in all honesty, maybe because I work with kids that are not healthy, that it's making me wonder what's going on with children. But at the same time, when we can focus on their health and target exactly what they need, particularly things like zinc is very important. But if I could give them a little bit of zinc and a little bit of B1 and B6, they can begin to reignite their third chakra again. And I see that happening within about 6 months to about 9 months. They can turn things around. And that's when I know that the resiliency is there. And that's what gives me hope, that they came into this world with a lot on their shoulders already. I'm grateful for them. And as somebody that is much older than they are, I've hit my menopause. I'm in my 50s now. I can look to them and say, now I want to support them further. But they need more knowledge. The parents need more knowledge. And that's where I can come in. People like us can come in and say, let's target this a little bit. Let's nourish this child. Because once the nourishment is there, that child knows exactly how to reignite their own third chakra. So that quick turnaround, or the abilities for them to course correct themselves, gives me hope. And it gives me more reasons to study and to learn and to be on the cutting edge of the science, so I can continue to help them.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And children they do really inspire hope in us. But I also think it's why, as you said, we're doing what we're doing. And we look around and we think, this is not the world we want to leave for our children and for our grandchildren. And we can do better than this. And it's worth whatever it takes for us to put into it at this point to make sure that happens. So that is the purpose behind Creatrix Convergence 2022. You have been an absolute dream to join us. Absolutely magnificent. We are so grateful for it. And to all of our listeners who I know are inspired by this amazing conversation, we invite you to look onto the website, creatrixconvergence.com, for all of the other interviews this entire week. They are available to you for free for 48 hours. And then, of course, you can purchase lifetime access if you don't want to miss a thing. And I'm sure you don't want to miss a thing. But until then, please go out, be the creatrix of your own life, and let's co-create a new future. Sending so much love.